April, with non-food inflation decelerating to 34.6% from 35.4% in April. The relative rise in inflation in May 2023 appears to reflect the pass-through effect of the utility price adjustment in April and the implementation of the new tax handles in May. We expect inflation to decelerate going forward. The cedi's depreciation has largely stabilized with a year-to-date depreciation rate of about 21.9% as of February 16, 2023, down from 50% in December 2023. The 91-day T-bill rate has declined 0.6%, down from 35.5% at the end of 2022. National reserves has improved after the disbursement of the first tranche of $604 million US following the approval of the IMF program. The current account balance turned positive at 0.9% of GDP at the end of March 2023 from minus 2.2% at the end of December 2022. In addition, the trade balance improved from 0.9% of GDP at the end of January 2023 to 2.2% at the end of April 2023. And recent GDP statistics released by the Ghana Statistical Service in April 2022 show that real growth ended 2022 at 3.1%, which was higher than growth projections by most international organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an ambitious agenda for reform. Let me state clearly that securing the IMF program is not an end to our current challenges, though it has significantly paved the way for the implementation of an ambitious and well-thought-out program of reform for our economy and country. In fact, the real work of adjustment, realignment, and the return to a path of steady economic growth has just begun. Let us brace ourselves for the needed reforms, especially in expenditure control, non-arrears accumulation, revenue growth, ECG collections, and energy sector reforms in order to rebuild the walls of the Republic with urgency. That said, our reform program, the Post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth, now supported by a 3-year Standard Credit Facility arrangement of the IMF, is built on clear targets and strong policy and structural measures. Over the medium term, the PCPEC-backed IMF program seeks to promote a credible fiscal consolidation program anchored by strong domestic revenue mobilization and high spending efficiency. The government is targeting a primary surplus on a commitment basis, the critical fiscal anchor under the program of 1.5% of GDP by 2025 through to 2028, to firmly anchor inflation expectations and preserve financial stability, to restore public debt to sustainable levels by 2028 by observing the two binding constraints of A, public debt in present value terms to GDP ratio of 55% or less, and an external debt service to revenue ratio of 18% or less. To enhance economic competitiveness with exports surpassing 37% of GDP in the medium term. Safeguarding social protection and enhancing targeting to ensure effectiveness of key interventions, minimizing fiscal risks, including from SOEs, and deepening structural reforms in targeted sectors such as energy and cocoa. It is important to stress that this structural reform agenda is consistent with government's own public financial management strategy to transition from central government to general government operations. This shift is critical as it facilitates clear oversight over key state institutions, that's MMDAs, SOEs, especially Cocoa Board and ECG, and others in the energy sector, and other quasi-state institutions whose operations have significant and direct fiscal impact on our economy. To put it in perspective, about 25% of our assessed debt burden emanates from non-central government operations, mainly from SOEs. Our ability to institute better governance standards of these institutions to address their liabilities and promote their growth will be significantly improved, especially in this period of collective reform. Critically, we must all remain committed to the agreed wide-ranging and strong structural reforms designed to address structural weaknesses and build resilience in key areas, including tax policy and tax administration, expenditure control and arrears clearance, financial stability, financial sector plans, review of statutory funds, governance and corruption, debt management, fiscal credibility, and energy sector and cocoa sector SOE reforms. With legacy debt in the energy sector reaching about $2 billion as at the end of May 2023, and an estimated shortfall of $5.9 billion between 2023 and 2025 due to the current conditions of SOEs and IPPs in the value chain in the sector. The sector has been prioritized for comprehensive reforms. It is expected that structural reforms in the sector should reduce the shortfall by at least $2.95 billion over the period. These reforms, which are aimed at sustainably reducing losses in the energy sector, will be outlined in the updated Energy Sector Recovery Plan, ESRP, which will be approved by Cabinet by end June 2023. It will be accompanied by, amongst others, the operationalization of a framework to guide the granting of energy sector subsidies by end June 2023, implementation of an inter-utility debt settlement framework on a quarterly basis starting from June 2023, and implementation of a mechanism to enforce the guidelines of the cash waterfall mechanism and natural gas clearinghouse by end June 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, similar reforms are envisaged under the PCPEC to revamp the cocoa sector and reduce and eliminate the annual losses of Cocoa Board and its indebtedness. The reforms in the cocoa sector include the implementation of a turnaround strategy to be approved by Cabinet by end June 2023. This is expected to address cocoa pricing issues, Cocoa Board oversight challenges, introduce cost rationalization measures, and a phase-out of quasi-fiscal spending. Ladies and gentlemen, other structural reforms to entrench fiscal discipline and bolster transparency include reforms to enhance revenue administration and tax policy, operationalization of the Human Resource Management Information System, enhancing spending controls and prevention of arrears buildup, and streamlining of earmark funds. In addition, government is transitioning from central government reporting to general government and from cash to accrual reporting. Our commitment to these reforms is matched by our relentless pursuit of innovation and strengthened partnership. Backed by the renewed drive for reforms, government is working towards securing significant support from our multilateral partners. Altogether, and including the IMF funds, World Bank, and AFDB support, we expect multilateral support of about $2 billion for 2023 and $6.2 billion between 2023 and 2026. We expect the World Bank to provide a total support of $1.6 billion, while the AFDB provides a total support of $200 million over the program period. In addition, we expect to mobilize catalytic funding, some $30 million this year and $330 million between 2023 and 2026 from bilateral creditors. We are also collaborating with other development partners, including the World Bank and the Africa Development Bank, to finance the Ghana Financial Stability Fund to provide liquidity and solvency support for the financial sector as a result of the assessed impact of the DDEP. The first phase of the fund involves a $750 million package to address solvency challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, be assured that while aggressively mobilizing domestic revenue, we remain focused on mobilizing complementary, sustainable external resources for our recovery and reform efforts to build a resilience that will promote shared prosperity for our people, while protecting and improving the lives of our more vulnerable population. A special collaborative effort between the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Agriculture, and GIPC will be part of the program on the thematic working groups on growth to attract significant private capital. Ladies and gentlemen, government intends to invest these resources to advance macroeconomic stability and shared economic growth. Government is very intentional in ensuring that growth and job creation are not sacrificed in the process of restoring macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. Specific interventions to support the economic recovery process include: 1. Improving the business environment, reducing the cost of doing business, and enhancing export competitiveness. In addition, local content legislation will be reviewed to encourage FDI while leveraging the opportunities offered by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. 2. Promoting entrepreneurship through initiatives such as the Youth Start program to create more jobs for the banking sector and faith-based organizations. Fast-tracking the implementation of key growth-oriented programs under the Ghana Care Sobatampa program. These programs include the Economic Enclave projects to enable self-sufficiency in rice, maize, vegetables, and poultry, and supporting large-scale agriculture and agribusiness interventions through the Development Bank of Ghana. Transitioning to a digital economy to boost productivity, tax collection, and formality. Expanding digital government services and promoting the BOG's digital currency will support digitalization and financial inclusion with adequate safeguards in place, and strengthening policies to support climate change adaptation and mitigation for inclusive growth. As you know, I was in South Africa, in South Korea and South Africa immediately after our IMF approval to drum up private sector engagements in agriculture and technology in particular, in order to pursue a more deliberate and aggressive growth agenda. We'll continue to engage the global community to support our growth program for growth and economic turnaround. We will be launching a Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue agenda to encourage domestic and external investors to be at the core of our growth agenda. We'll be working with Ghanaian businesses and entrepreneurs, think tanks and NGOs, and larger resident multinationals such as the telcos, mining and oil companies to facilitate ease of doing business and promoting business in Ghana. In line with our tradition of compassion and care for the underprivileged, we expect to strengthen social protection through increases in social spending to protect the most vulnerable and the poor from the impact of adjustments under the program. Recall that the 2023 budget already made specific provision for: 1, doubling the LEAP payment per beneficiary household from 45 cedis per month to 90 cedis, with progressive increases in the number of beneficiary households from the current 344,185 households. Coverage will be expanded to all 2.5 million extremely poor individuals by 2024. We plan that by end September 2023, an indexation mechanism will be introduced in the LEAP program to prevent erosion of value over time. Increasing the budgetary allocation for the school feeding program to compensate for higher costs of meals and also to ensure a more efficient management of the program. Increasing the capitation grant over time as part of measures to improve foundational learning, and ensuring prompt payment of the NHIS from the Consolidated Fund. There will also be a review of the package of benefits and tariff structures for the scheme. Ladies and gentlemen, it must be clear that there is enormous work ahead. To sustain and optimize this partnership with the IMF, Ghana proposed and negotiated 6 quantitative performance criteria, 9 structural benchmarks, and 3 indicative targets. Specifically, these performance indicators have been carefully selected to enable us to achieve our reform objectives as well as build resilience to better withstand future global and domestic shocks as they are certain to occur. We would like to emphasize that contrary to other commentaries, these performance indicators emanate from our cabinet-approved PC-PEG. To support the effective implementation of reforms and interventions of the IMF-backed PC-PEG, government has put in place a clear implementation strategy. The strategy includes sensitization of key stakeholders, including Cabinet, EMT, Council of State, Parliament, National House of Chiefs, organized labor, employers associations, including AGI and Chambers of Commerce, MDAs, MMDAs, investors, CSOs and think tanks, FBOs, the general public, NDPC, commissioners, heads of SOEs, development partners, and the media. We have already engaged Cabinet, EMTs, sovereign sector regional ministers and MCs organized by the Ministry of Agriculture, Council of State, chief directors and heads of covered entities, PPME directors in MDAs, MOF staff, and a cross-section of the media. Today, the general public has accordingly been apprised. The rest will follow. Implementing a comprehensive communication strategy for the PCPEG program, ensuring public funds and their usage, including the IMF funds, are audited by the Auditor General of Ghana. Program implementation will be monitored on a monthly basis at various levels, including Cabinet, Economic Management Team, and the Economic Policy Coordinating Committee. Additionally, we are introducing 6 thematic working groups which will meet weekly and will be chaired by the Minister of State and Deputy Ministers of the Ministry of Finance, Deputy Ministers of other relevant ministries, and Deputy Governors of the Bank of Ghana. In fact, specifically, the following thematic working groups have been established. 1. Energy sector SOEs/Cocoa Board structural reforms. 2. Public financial management structural reforms. 3. Financial sector structural reforms. 4. Tax policy and revenue administration structural reforms. 5. Macro fiscal policy reforms. And 6. Growth and social protection. Ladies and gentlemen, as this path towards a reformed, diversified, and resilient economy, we stand ready to engage and receive inputs from all stakeholders to implement the IMF-backed PCPEG program. Accordingly, civil society, think tanks, organized labor, FBOs, and private sector actors will be engaged in our policy dialogues towards effective implementation of the program. Already discussions are ongoing with ASSET. Despite the considerable progress, there remains key outstanding operations, especially in debt restructuring. We are at advanced stages of completing the debt exchange program in relation to the cocoa bills and the US dollar-denominated local bonds. We have also rolled out a program to engage independent power producers. Consistent with the MOU signed with organized labor in December 2022 on the exemption of pension funds, they continue to be exempted. Government is currently engaging organized labor and pension fund corporate trustees in line with the MOU to explore mutually beneficial options within debt sustainability limits and to promote macroeconomic stability and economic growth in the spirit of social partnership. We have also successfully worked with the Paris Club and other creditors to determine the parameters of our official debt restructuring under the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatment. In the coming weeks, we will seek to complete the MOU of the OCC on the terms of bilateral debt treatment. Government will sustain engagement with private creditors, Eurobond investors on external debt to reach agreement with the private creditors in the shortest possible time. In light of the above, we will count on all stakeholders, especially the media, to be circumspect on their reportage on the economy to avoid derailing the progress being made. Our love of country must supersede all, and as the late P.A.V. Ansan, a University of Ghana Communications School professor, said, Journalism 101 teaches media students that they have 3 basic roles: to inform, educate, and entertain. However, for developing countries, there is a 4th: to foster national cohesion. National cohesion is the foundation upon which any and everything else is built, unquote. Ansan had journalists in mind when attaching his addendum to the classical test. But as we watch events unfold in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other countries elsewhere in the region, this is in fact a role that holds true for everyone. The misreporting on China was unnecessary and unfortunate. Unfounded accusations against government officials leading to the recovery are untenable and serve no useful purpose. Undoubtedly, the need for accuracy must override speed in these circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, we are certainly at the beginning of a promising journey towards not just recovery, but also resettling our economy. As a number of you have said to me, we have turned the corner. Government is committed to restoring Ghana's economic fortunes within the shortest possible time through a combination of front-loaded fiscal adjustment and structural reforms while creating the conditions for private sector-led growth. Going forward, we will continue to count on the support of all Ghanaians, including the general public, to achieve the objectives set out in the IMF-backed PCPEC. We engaged the IMF Technical Mission last week, 8th to 15th June, to discuss recent economic developments and the implementation of the program. In this regard, we undertook a joint assessment of Ghana's preparedness for the first review of the program scheduled for September 2023. This will pave the way for the IMF board to consider and approve the first review and the disbursement of the second tranche of $600 million in November 2023. As the IMF attested to all of us in their press release on 15th June 2023, against a complex global, I quote, against a complex global economic backdrop, the Ghanaian economy is showing signs of stabilization, with softening inflation, an increased international reserve, and less volatile exchange rate. The economy is showing signs of stabilization, softening inflation, and an increase in international reserve, and a less volatile exchange rate. As a people, we must continue to be inspired by the momentum that propelled us to secure support in near record time to implement the PCPEC. We have a history of accomplishments in these situations. In 2017, we renegotiated a derailed IMF program, imposed stringent conditions on ourselves, and collectively achieved them ahead of schedule. From a macro fiscal standpoint, the results were remarkable. Between period 2017 and 2019, economic growth doubled of an average of 7% annually, inflation coming down to single digits 7.9% in 2019 from 15.4% in 2016. The fiscal deficit, which was about 6.5%, was brought under 5%. Exchange rate depreciation reduced significantly to under 5% in 2017, averaging 8.7% between 2017 and 2019. Alongside these achievements, we made significant investment in education, health, infrastructure, and revitalized the financial sector to promote private sector entrepreneurship. We emerged as a bright star on the regional and global stage, proud to the pandemic. And no less, in the COVID period, also illustrated a strong desire to keep our people alive. Ladies and gentlemen, we are being called upon to do this again and surpass this stellar performance. We must push past these dark clouds that suddenly gathered and reclaim our manifest destiny. We must resolve and resort to our collective inner strength and overcome this new challenge for our country. We must do this inspired by assurance that the good book provides in Joel 2:25, that I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. We shall surely be restored if we persist on this path to recovery and transformation. The Lord has rescued us with the IMF approval. We will recover all. He will restore what the locusts have destroyed, and Ghana shall experience his revival. We will surely rejoice in the restoration of our nation if we persist on this path of recovery and transformation. The battle is indeed the Lord's. I want to thank you again for your attention. God bless our homeland, Ghana, and make us great and strong. God bless us all. Happy Father's Day.
Minister, thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, we'll go straight into the questions. We'll try and do at least about 4 rounds of questions I encourage you to keep them straight to the point, and just to allow your other colleagues to also ask questions, perhaps not more than 2. If we have more room, we will come for some more questions. Just to recap, Minister has spoken about some structural reforms and has made the point that we need all hands on deck. We need everybody's support for these structural reforms to be successful, be they in the cocoa area or moving from cash to commitment basis or SOE reforms. We need everybody on board for it to work. He's also mentioned that one of the vulnerabilities that the IMF talks about, the energy sector.
Kitchen Wars.
The most anticipated cooking reality show is making its return to your screen. It is Kitchen Wars Season 2. Old school alumni get ready to compete for yet another epic showdown. Which alumni will take over from WAS?
The school that came in first place, West Africa!
Get your ladles out, sharpen your knives, and be ready to battle it out. Interested alumni must be in a group of 6 to participate. Simply send your details 0531 906 281 to register and stand the chance of being the best alumni in the kitchen. It's Kitchen Wars Season 2. Kitchen Wars, your school feed cook. Kitchen Wars.
Kitchen Wars, coming soon on TV3. This program is rated PG. It contains scenes of brief nudity, mild violence, and strong language. Parental guidance is advised.